Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Couple of weeks, Browns will be in training camp at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. This is from Michelle Smallman on ESPN's Unsportsmanlike Top 5 NFL Fan Bases. She goes Jets 5, Bills 4, Packers 3, Eagles 2, Steelers 1. One of her co-hosts on the show, Evan Cohn, with his response to the top 5.
The Cleveland Browns fans are the single best fans in the entire league. There is no fan base that is better than the Cleveland Brown fan. The Cleveland Brown fan had their team removed from their city and still somehow supported the team that when they came back, they were selling out every single game.
But if the fans were so good, then why did the team leave Cleveland?
Oh, no,
initially?
we're not going to do that because that doesn't have anything to do with it a lot of the time. It's about money. It's about greed.
Thank you.
But that wasn't the case the first time when the Browns left. That wasn't the case.
But, okay, so
that wasn't the situation.
Any way you cut it, though. They come back. They go 1-31 over the course of 2 seasons. There are things that have happened with that franchise that you can't even fathom. The owner of the team claimed to get advice on who to draft from a homeless person on the side of the road. That is not a made-up story. That is true. They have had more quarterbacks than you can imagine. They have had more failed draft picks than you can imagine. They've made more bad moves than you can imagine. And this fan base is so loyal to that team. They show up to every game. They talk about it year-round on ESPN Cleveland, and they absolutely love their team in a way that I have never seen. I've never seen a fan base love one team more than they love the Cleveland Browns. And there is not, over the course of time, there is now, but there has not been a lot to love. And they still absolutely love them. They are, I've lived in New York the majority of my life. They're way better fans than the Jets fans. Way better fans.
With that, let's welcome in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Barber Shop, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush, that was Chris Canty. He played for the Ravens. He should know it was because Art Modell was a horrible businessman. It had nothing to do with the fans, everything to do with an owner that couldn't keep the finances in order.
Slow clap. Listen, that gentleman that gave that monologue right there, listen, he buy that man a beer, he got it. He understood what the task was. He did his homework. He didn't have no producer slide him notes last second. He understood what it was. Let me just be clear. Come on, Chris. You sound like you was hating there right there. Well, they took the team because the fans didn't support. Stop. You didn't do your homework. You rolled out of bed. You saw what the list was. And you were like, I'm going to just take a crap on the Browns. Stop playing around. I'm going to just say this. The Cleveland Browns, I'm going to go a different way on why the Cleveland Browns are the best fan base in the world, because nowhere in the world are the Browns backers in all around this great globe as strong as the Browns backers are. I'm going to tell you what, I do internet radio. I do internet stuff. I'm not even famous, my man. And there are people in Iceland, people in the Philippines, people in Australia, people in New Zealand. One of our biggest fans is in India. He doesn't even watch football, but he is a diehard Browns fan because of what we do, the way we talk about them. It's not just a sport. It is part of our DNA. When the leaves turn, we are all in on Browns, and guess what? We do it year round. By the way, do your research. You can't have a better fan base than saying that Cleveland started in Northeast Ohio is the home of pro football. You are all guests. You are guests to what we do here in the great state of Ohio. No shout out, no disrespect to Texas and Friday Night Lights and Florida and the athletes they produce, but football started here in Northeast Ohio, my home stomping grounds, the great city of Canton, Ohio. That is the cradle of football. You pay homage to that. And us as Browns fans, it is a travesty that we had our team taken. But what we've gone through past that and still show up at the community lots, still shows up at the tailgates, and here we go, Brownies. It rings out everywhere. Come on now. We're the number one fan base in the entire world. And I've told you, if we win the Super Bowl, and when we do win the Super Bowl, we will have simulcasted presidential parades all around the world at the same time with Browns backers united.
All right, and I agree with you. And, Evan Cohn got it without question. He went on to say he thought the Browns fan base was the best in all of sports, which, again, they disagreed with, but that's fine. This is from ESPN series. They've been going through position by position, NFL executives, coaches, and scouts, ranking the top position groups. Today was the tight ends. Travis Kelce from Cleveland Heights, number 1. George Kittle, 2. Mark Andrews, 3. Laporta, 4. Hawkinson, 5. They say David Njoku, 6. Veteran NFL personnel man. It's probably taken him a while to get the nuances of the game down, but his size and athleticism have always been a problem for defenses. Not polished, little inconsistent when it comes to a feel for the game, but he's gotten better. And that's the scary part. He's still getting better, G. Bush.
One of the youngest guys when they drafted him out of Miami. It felt like he's had 3 careers. The career where he was just very raw and looked like he did not know what to do. I remember back in his early part of his career, could not block a soul. Coaches like, hey, if you don't block anybody, we can't play you. Became a pretty good blocker, and then he had to work on his hands. Would make a spectacular catch, but let the routine catches hit him in the face and in opportune times. Then it was a situation where he felt like he wasn't being utilized. He looked like he was disgruntled. Looks like he was not going to be a guy that was going to be with this team. And then all of a sudden, it just clicked. He put the blocking, he put the catching together. And the biggest thing that happened was he matured. He turned into a guy that you could count on. He became into one of the biggest advocates for the city of Cleveland. He became a man in the city of Cleveland. And when you put it all together, I think he now has his best years of football ahead of him. He's not reached his prime. I think he's reaching his prime. The next 3 years to me is where David Njoku really figures it out, that they can't guard me. This is the way I need to catch the football. This is the way I need to learn the small nuances of the game in the blocking game. And red zone targets, all of those different things. He has a quarterback now that can get him the football. I think David Njoku is right up there with some of the best tight ends in the game. And I think he's going to have his best years yet to come. Yeah,
he was 20 when they drafted him. It's one of the reasons Andrew Berry in the front office likes those age guardrails that we talk about all the time. Because by the time you're into your second year, you're hitting your prime and you still got a lot of good football left. Speaking about a young guy with a lot of good football left, Martin Emerson, and take a look at these numbers from a year ago. He only gave up more than 58 yards in a game once. It was 66 against Seattle. They got some pretty good receivers, DK Metcalf and Smith and Jigba, and he didn't allow a single touchdown scored on him in 2023. What more do you want this guy to do as a cornerback, G. Bush? That's pretty impressive.
What's really impressive is I was doing some research getting ready for training camp. You look at PFF. PFF had, Denzel Ward rated 17th, best corner. Then you look at, they had Greg Newsome III. Greg, he was rated 24th. And then this is the top 35 corners. They had Martin Emerson Jr. rated 34th, right? So think about that. The Cleveland Browns have 3 of the top 35 corners in the league. And this guy, Martin Emerson Jr., is a guy that does not get the respect he's deserved. I believe he's an all-pro type candidate. I think he's a Pro Bowl type candidate. I think people are just a little late getting onto the bandwagon. We know Greg Newsome is a first-round pick. We know Denzel Ward is a top 10 pick. Martin Emerson Jr. is a third-round pick, right? When you're taking that low, it takes people. The name recognition isn't there. But listen, forget the name recognition. His game speaks for itself. You take a look at what he's able to do. No touchdowns in 2023. He's a guy that is getting better with playing the ball and making plays in the pass game. And we also know he's one of the more physical corners in the game, longer type corner. I think this year is a year where people start to say, hey, we know we got Denzel. We know we got Greg Newsome. But, hey, look out for that Martin Emerson over there, because guess what? Contract time is coming up for him. He does not have that 4th year, right? The 5th year. He doesn't have the 5th year not being a first-round pick. So he's going to get to the market a little earlier than he would have if he was a first-round pick. So these are big-time years for Martin Emerson Jr. because he's paying for that bag.
Yes, sir. You're going to have to back up the Brinks truck because I have a feeling you're right. He's got that all-pro potential. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Good morning, gents. This is Jim from Rochester. I just wanted to make a comment. I know that on your show yesterday, they said something about Rochester. Rochester, New York is a great town to live in. The majority of us are baby boomers, and that's why we root for the Browns. And that's why we're so disgusted, because not much time left on the planet for most of us, and the Browns don't seem to be concerned about giving us a good product. And that's the one thing that bothers me, and that's what's frustrating. I just wanted to go on record as saying that. So that's why you hear from us so much. And I'm glad that a few other people are finally starting to call, because it's frustrating, guys. Hey, have a good one. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. So, G. Bush, just so you're up to speed, Jim has called in just kind of critical of some of the things. He wants a little bit more fire from the head coach and the like. I get it. You know, I know a lot of people from Rochester, Jim. I went to school at John Carroll with a number of them. Some of my best friends grew up in Rochester. I get that guys of that generation are frustrated, but I would tell you this front office and this organization is headed in the right direction. You can't look at it. The game is changing quickly. And the problem with the Browns, they've always been chasing it, you know. They let Marty Schottenheimer go. They were trying to find the next Marty Schottenheimer. Well, Bill Cowher got away from them, so they're trying to find the next Bill Cowher. They're finally ahead of it. You can't be something you're not. And that's the one thing Kevin Stefanski understands, and that's why you can argue it. That locker room responds to him without question.
And, you know, I've been critical at times about Kevin Stefanski. But, you know, sometimes when you're presented with new information as humans, go ahead and take that information, log it away, and give yourself the grace to change your mind on certain situations. When you look at Kevin Stefanski, one thing that you can say about him is guys play hard for him. Guys are going to run through that brick wall for him. Guys respond to him. The David Njoku's of the world speak highly of him. You take a look at Joe Batonio's and the Wyatt Tellers and the guys like Nick Chubb and all those guys out there, Myles Garrett. They speak highly of Kevin Stefanski. And here's the thing I'll give Kevin Stefanski credit for. How many coaches would have stood there in front of the firing squad and said, you know, when he was asked to make the deal to say, all right, let's go ahead and go in a different direction from our offensive coordinator, right? Well, how many times, you know, you being the coach of the year, you could say, well, look, Alex Van Pelt was with me every single year that I was coach of the year. That would denote that we're doing something right. I've been able to pick a Schwartz, you know, and have the best assistant coach. I was able to have Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, I'm doing some things right, but he took enough look at it. They presented him the numbers, and he did what's best, what he thought was for the Cleveland Browns, and he moved on. He said, "Bring in Dorsey." Bring in a guy that wants to throw the ball more vertical. Let's go and get some more assistant coaches, right, that are going to bring a different feel, a different vibe, a different perspective. And so he brings those guys in. There's a lot of people that say, man, I'm not bringing in nothing. Like, I'm the coach of the year. I should get an opportunity to have who I want on the staff have it on there. I'll give it to him. The Cleveland Browns took a lot of heat for bringing in a guy like Deshaun Watson, right? The Cleveland Browns could have said, you know what, Nick Chubb, we like what you're doing. The cap hit is much too big. We're going to move on from you, right? They could have done a lot of things, but the Cleveland Browns have stayed pat. And I will tell you, all those people in Rochester, all the baby boomers, I promise you this. The Cleveland Browns are turning the corner, and the Cleveland Browns are going to be Super Bowl caliber contenders for the next couple of years. We all lived through it a little bit in the past, but guess what? Trust me, the next couple of years, I think they're going to be special.
And Jim, I don't often agree with some of the things you say. I understand them, though. That's the reason we put those on the air. Right? All opinions are welcome. Just don't get crazy with them. That's the only thing. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check-writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, host of The Barbershop on 92.3 The Fan. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I was thinking about the Cleveland sports landscape. This is a rare time we're living in at the moment. All three major sports teams are legitimate playoff contenders or even maybe championship contenders. In your opinion, which franchise has the best opportunity to win a title this upcoming year? For me personally, I picked the Browns. I truly think they're on the cusp of greatness. What say you? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, I think it's the Browns, and I know the Guardians are having a great year. I don't think they have the pieces there to go deep in the playoffs, and I'm not sure they can get them. The Cavs, I don't see it. I don't see him getting past the Celtics. I don't see him getting past the 76ers right now as it's constructed.
Yeah, we just had this little exercise, like, what do you give the Cavs offseason grade? I'll say, well, listen, you signed Donovan Mitchell. That's an A. I liked the signing of when you look at the signing of their head coach, and when you get him in there, Kenny Atkinson, I'm like, okay, I love that. From the jump, I like that move. That's an A. But I got to give you an F because you did nothing else to the tail end of your roster. You haven't gotten any free agents. Philadelphia is better. They got Paul George. Maxey signed an extended deal. And Joel Embiid, all he does is average 30 points when he's on the court. 31, 32 points, MVP candidate. They're better. You take a look at it. The Boston Celtics, they got 3 or 4 guys, or 3 now, that are on the Olympic team. They're going to get better because of that. Their guys are younger. So you know what that means. And Giannis is coming back. For the Milwaukee Bucks, Dame Dollar is still over there. So to me, I could only put the Cavaliers at either 5th or 6th in the Eastern Conference. Let's go into football. Patrick Mahomes is still alive and well. He just keeps winning. Josh Allen. Let's not mention just the quarterbacks in the AFC North being a gauntlet. With every one of those teams potentially can make the playoffs in the AFC North, with the Steelers, the Bengals, Ravens, Browns. That's going to be murderer's row. Then you still got to get past a guy like Josh Allen. You still got to get past Patrick Mahomes. Oh, by the way, you got the Justin Herberts of the world, and a guy named Aaron Rodgers, who the Jets are hoping comes back at the top of his game. So it's going to be a tough battle for the Cleveland Browns. Surprisingly, I'm taking the Cleveland Guardians. And the reason I take the Guardians, not because they have the best roster, not because they are in first place right now over the Twins 4.5 games. I'm picking them not because of what they're doing. It's the nature of baseball. When you take a look at it, Texas Rangers, Arizona Diamondbacks, I couldn't name you a guy on either one of their teams last year. Oh, yes, I can. Austin Hedges, right? But he batted like 105 or something. So he was not a big part of it. But when you look at those teams, the nature of baseball is when you get in the race, you put yourself in position to get into the playoffs. Anything can happen. Home court advantage or home field advantage is not as marketed as it is in basketball as well as football. And on top of that, if the Guardians can make a couple of innings eaters, now, obviously, they're going to have to battle the Orioles. Obviously, the Yankees are going to be in that mix as well. They need some pitching. But if the Guardians can get a couple guys to get them to, get those guys to September, where you could get some innings eater, you don't tire out your bullpen, and anything can happen. I think the Guardians, in a baseball atmosphere, they got good a shot as anybody to win the championship.
I hope you're right. I'm not not seeing it with the Guardians this year, but that's all right. That's all right. This is from Rotoballer, 3 sneaky Super Bowl contenders. They go Jets, Falcons, and Browns. Despite finishing an 11-6 record, making the playoffs last year, no one's talking about the Browns Super Bowl contenders in 2024. Of course, there are question marks about Deshaun Watson, whether he can return to form in his 2020 self. However, he doesn't necessarily need to be that elite of a quarterback to help the Browns make the Super Bowl. I agree with that. I think Deshaun Watson, and it's not all Deshaun Watson, but it is Deshaun Watson. Let him play. Let him do the things, and I think they're going to. I think they're going to tailor the offense a little bit more to his skill set. Two things. Defense has to be a little bit better in the red zone, create more turnovers, and the Browns have to eliminate the turnovers. Deshaun Watson plays better, they eliminate the turnovers. Good luck with this team.
I always ask people this. Do we think that Deshaun Watson is better than Baker Mayfield?
Yes.
I think a lot of people will tell you yes. I think you may get a 75-25%. If both of those guys are healthy at the top of their game, do you think Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson has a better upside or a better talented person than Baker Mayfield? Most people will say yes. Well, look, Baker Mayfield last year for Tampa Bay Buccaneers threw for 4,000 yards, right? He threw for 24 plus touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, I believe. Those are attainable numbers. If you told me you swapped out Baker Mayfield numbers and you gave them to Deshaun Watson, 4,000 yards, 24, 25 touchdowns, under 10 interceptions, guess what this team automatically looks like? You still got Myles Garrett. You still got the defense. You got them coming back with Jim Schwartz's second year. You're still going to have a solid run game. If you're telling me you threw for all those yards, if you put those numbers next to Deshaun Watson, I'd be hard-pressed to say these guys are in the AFC Championship game. They might win the division easy, and they could be possibly in the Super Bowl. So we're not asking you to throw for 5,000 yards. I'll get greedy sometimes and ask for 4,500, and I like to see over 30 touchdowns, maybe like 35. I get greedy sometimes. I'm the Duke of knee jerk. I'm sorry. I just be one that I just want to put all the doubters to bed. But if you gave me the Baker Mayfield numbers from last year, you can't tell me that the Cleveland Browns are on a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. Here's your thing, though. 35 touchdowns now, that's only a little over 2 a game. That's
playing 17 games.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable from Deshaun Watson if you're throwing the ball an extra 5-10 times a game as well.
Yeah.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. He is host of The Barbershop, 92.3 The Fan, Saturdays from 8 until noon. You can also catch him in the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show from 11 to 1, Monday through Friday. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out other side of the break. Lance Reisland, film breakdown, video analysis, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. One of the teams Browns are going to be battling for that AFC North title is the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens have a couple of rookies. Time to take a film breakdown video analysis of some of the new Ravens, the rookies, how the Browns might be able to attack them. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, we've talked about it. Each of the teams got better through the draft, including the Browns. And really, the Ravens, I know you like a couple of the guys that we're going to talk about, Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten, cornerback Wiggins, offensive tackle Rosengarten. But when you look at these guys, these are guys that, even though they were drafted late, they look pretty good.
Well, I try to, so as we get done through the offseason, now I start to break down film and start to see the Browns matchups and who they're going to go against and where they have the advantage. And the AFC North absolutely drafted wonderfully in terms of finding needs for themselves. Now, as I start to look at the matchups, as good as these two guys are, and I think they're elite, I think the two rookies that are probably going to start are going to be Wiggins and Rosengarten. And I really think with the addition of Derrick Henry, their offensive line being what it is and returning some guys, defensively, even though they lost Queen, they got Roquan inside, they got Metabuke inside, they got they got Humphrey at the corner, they got Kyle Hamilton, list goes on and on. So I really think they have to attack, as talented as these guys are, I think they have to attack these two rookies to give themselves the best opportunity. One, keep the ball away from Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in his 9,000 plus yards, career rushing yards, and then kind of exploit where the Ravens are going to be weak. And they're not weak in a lot of places. And I don't think these rookies are going to be weak, but I do think their inexperience gives the Browns an advantage there.
All right, so Nate Wiggins is a 6'1" cornerback, 173 pounds, played at Clemson. Some thought he might be one of the better cover corners in this draft class. What did you see when you like it? And take us through this clip and what you see here.
I broke down a lot of film, so he's really hard to find a mistake on. So that's kind of how good he is. So this is Tez Walker from North Carolina, also a former Kent State Flash. A little shout out to the Flashes here. So he's a big body receiver. So Tez Walker is about 6'1", probably in the 190, 195 range. And this is about the only thing that I think gives Nate Wiggins an issue. So if you look, one of the things when you're slight, so at 173 pounds, even though he's long and he ran sub 4.3, it is really hard for him to reroute guys who are big bodied. So if you think about Amari Cooper, you think about Cedric Tillman, I think Nate Wiggins, even as a rookie, will match up well against Jerry Jeudy. I think he'll match up well against Elijah Moore because of his size. However, those big body guys, Cooper and Tillman, they are going to give him problems. First, on the line of scrimmage, it's very hard for him to jam these big guys. Secondly, you're going to see Tez Walker right here get on top of Wiggins, and Wiggins has trouble getting through the big body of Walker. So I think the Browns, obviously with Marlon Humphrey, I think Marlon Humphrey will be attached to Amari Cooper. And I think Cedric Tillman's a guy who's going to have a big day against Wiggins if they decide to go with Wiggins on him because of the body type, the big body, 6'3", 215 pounds. I think Cedric Tillman gives this guy problems because of his size. He's a really good corner and he's elite, but he's not a very heavy guy, even though he's long.
So along those lines, here's a look at Cooper and kind of how you think the Browns can attack Wiggins.
So this is the big game Cooper had against Texans when they played him first. Now Tingley, is he's a corner. He's 6'1", about 185, 190 pounds. So he's not real small, but he's not as big as Cooper. Cooper is an amazingly thick, big guy when you go watch him in person. So this is just a deep slant in the red zone. And Cooper does a really good job of pushing and kind of getting into the body of Tingley. Now, what he does as he gets into the body of Tingley, now it becomes a basketball play. So now Cooper can just simply get his body in front of Stingley, and kind of box him out to not allow Stingley to get over the top or get through the body of Cooper. And this is a really good job of closing the gap and using his body against Stingley. And Cooper does this a bunch against Stingley. He does it against the other corners against the Texans in this game where he had a huge game. But this is a great example of what I think Tillman and Cooper can do against Wiggins if Wiggins is forced to play for the Ravens.
Well, the other thing that you mentioned, all the guys that are back for the Ravens, they did lose their defense coordinator, Mike McDonald. Really good young head coach, took the head coaching job with the Seahawks. So that's, in and of itself, is an adjustment.
Well, yeah. So defensively, you're going to have a different mindset. You're going to have, it's all basically the defense comes down to what do you have to learn term wise, right? So everybody plays man, everybody plays two high safeties, one high safety. It's just kind of learning that terminology. The Ravens have historically been a very, very physical, in your face, man coverage kind of team. And I don't think that personality changes because Harbaugh's still in charge, and Harbaugh's an old school guy who likes to get in your face and challenge you. Now, I think Humphrey and Cooper is a great matchup, but this opposite corner with Wiggins is kind of something that I think the Browns can really take advantage of. Obviously, very important for Cooper to get into camp, but this is a matchup that I think this could be a breakout game for Tillman because as a coordinator, you start to look for matchups. And the Ravens are really good on defense, especially just because of their toughness and their culture of who they are on defense. They're going to be with Roquan Smith inside. They're going to be very, very tough. You got to find these matchups. And I really think this is going to be a game where Tillman's really, really good against Wiggins.
So the next pick that we're going to take a look at, Roger Rosengarten, offensive tackle, and he is mammoth, 6'5", 308 pounds, out of the University of Washington last year. What did you see with Rosengarten?
So this is very interesting. You can see him at the right tackle here. This is in the national championship game, and he doesn't give it up any sacks, but he gives up this kind of stuff all the time. So if you take a look again over and over here, you're going to see him vertically get pushed back. And what ends up happening, again, now, if you ask me my comparison is something that people don't like, but for me, he's comparable to Jed Wills. He's an elite athlete, just like Jed Wills is. Now, what ends up happening at the college level is that he gets too high, and he plays with high pad level. And when you play with high pad level, people can get into your chest in the pass game, and they can also get underneath of you. If you think about Myles Garrett when he bends on those elite, the Watt brothers, Watt when he gets underneath you. So he's going to have to really work on his ability to bend and get his pad level down. Again, played over 1,700 snaps the last 2 years and didn't give up a sack. So there's not a lot of things you don't like about him. He's super athletic. But again, like Jed Wills, the reason Jed Wills sometimes struggles is because he loses his fundamentals and his technique. And in the NFL, if you lose your fundamentals and technique, you get beat, especially when you're going against a guy like Myles Garrett. So I look for the Browns to put Myles Garrett over there. I look for them to put Zadarius down at the 3 technique, and I look for him to isolate on Rosengard. Not because he's a rookie, because he likes to play high and use his athleticism. Now, I think this guy is going to be an elite tackle in 2 or 3 years when he goes, you know what? I can't just rely on my pad level. My athleticism. I got to get my pad level down. But this year, this is a bad matchup for the Ravens. All the Browns defense, Obo, Zadarius, they're all bad matchups for him.
All right, so along those lines, just like we did with Wiggins, let's take a look at how you think Myles Garrett can attack this.
So if you remember the last clip, right? Stood up high. So here's what happened. So in the first clip, here you're going to see the bend around the corner because the tackle is too high. Now, as you see, Myles gets underneath the tackle there. He's not beating the tackle with speed. He's beating the tackle with bend. If you win with bend. Now here, you're going to see him get his right hand in on the chest of the right tackle of the Ravens, who is now going to be Rosengard, and he just beats him with power because the tackle is too high. Then you're going to see Becton from the Jets here. Becton is way too high, and Myles will bend. And this is what makes Myles the defensive player of the year, is his ability to bend. But these are the same 2 type of plays that Rosengard had struggled with in college. Even though he didn't get beat for a sack, he often would get beat with bend and with speed and with power into his chest. And those are things he's going to see constantly against the Browns.
When training camp, not very far away, we were talking about it before we did this segment. What are you paying a close attention to the first little bit of training camp? What are you anxious to see?
Well, first and foremost, I'm looking forward to the pads going on. I'm looking forward to seeing Coach Dickerson work with that offensive line because I have been a huge Callahan fan. I'm a huge fan of how Callahan works in the repetition. And Callahan always wanted to know why and why you do things. And here's how you do it. And you would see that in its players. Its offensive linemen knew what they were doing. I'm really looking forward to seeing Jedrick, Wills, Conklin, and Jones. And when I see how they work with Dickerson and who comes out of that as the guy, the odd man out or the third tackle, because I find it very hard to think that DeJuan Jones is not going to be the starting right tackle or the starting left tackle. So I really think it comes down to Conklin and Wills because I think Jones is that good. But we'll see. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Dickerson and how he works with those tackles because the interior line is really, really good. The Browns got to figure out who those tackles are.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. I know we will be checking in with you once again before you head out to training camp. We'll also be checking in with you after you come back from the Greenbrier as well. Lance, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis for the Browns as well as the rest of the NFL and the entire football, does college stuff as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Sunday is the MLB Draft, and we are pleased to have Keith Law, one of the best writers nationally for baseball from The Athletic, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We turn our attention to the Guardians. A three-game series will wrap up the first half of the year, and then it's the Major League Baseball Draft Sunday. Guardians, for the first time ever, will have the first overall pick in that draft. President of Baseball Operations Chris Antonetti talked about how the Guardians will approach this year's draft and having that first overall pick.
One of the things we're excited about within this draft class is there's a number of good high-quality players available to us with the first pick. And we think that'll be the case, actually, with subsequent picks we have after the first pick. So that's probably the best direction I can give you, is that there's a group of players that we would be excited about bringing into the organization with the first pick. I think there are two things that will go into our decision. First and foremost, the thing we are trying to solve for organizationally is use the resources and draft capital we have available to us to bring in the most talented group possible. And that's really what we're solving for. And we think, when we look up at the end of the draft, we'll feel good about the group of players we bring into the organization.
With that, let's welcome in Keith Law, one of the best baseball writers in America, currently writes for The Athletic. Keith, we've got your top 100 prospect scouting report. Before we get into that, can you explain the whole slotting process and pool money that's available? Because Chris Antonetti had said, that they're kind of viewing it as the most overall pool money ever available, and we know that there's $10.5 million slotted to that first overall pick.
Sure. So the number one thing to bear in mind for folks who don't know about the mechanics of the baseball draft is we don't have fixed bonuses for each pick. So if you are the first overall pick or the 10th or the 20th, your bonus is not fixed. There is a recommended slot value for each selection in the first 10 rounds. And each club then has a bonus pool equal to the sum of all of those recommendations. But each individual pick's bonus can be negotiated, will be negotiated, and you can go over slot or under slot with any individual pick. The goal is to keep your total for all your bonuses for all the players you pick in the top 10 rounds. I mean, there are little exceptions. I'm just trying to stay big picture here. Don't exceed your total recommendation, total of all those recommendations, by more than 5%. In that case, if you go more than 5% over, you lose a pick the next year. So you can take that first pick, which Cleveland has, and go under slot, under the recommendation, which almost every team does when they pick first overall, and then take that reduction and apply it to subsequent picks, usually to multiple subsequent picks, to go over slot. So you go under slot at 1, you go over slot at 36 and 48. As long as the total doesn't exceed your total recommendation by more than 5%, you're golden. And teams that pick first overall tend to do exactly that. It is a common strategy to offer your first pick, say, a little bit more than the slot recommendation for pick number 2, so that you can go get several other first round talents with picks in second round, third round, or in the case of Cleveland, if you have extra picks, all the more reason to get creative, try to land. If I'm Cleveland, I'm thinking we're going to get 3 first round talents, or we can, at least if we play our board correctly.
So, yeah, they have 3 of the top 50. We'll get a little bit into that after this, but I want to get into some of the guys that the Guardians are looking at number 1 overall. And you've done scouting reports on the top 100. I'd encourage everybody to go to The Athletic and take a look at it. You also have done some mock drafts. First guy that we're going to look at, your number 1 overall prospect on the board, Charlie Condon. We've talked about him. You see the scouting profile, power hitter, has broke some some NCAA records relative to restricted bats that they hit with this year. Top comp, they have Richie Sexson. Guardians fans will remember him from his Indian days. Also, Chris Bryant, Jason Worth, and Jorge Solar mentioned as potential comps. What do you like about Condon? What have you seen about Condon? It's a guy that, by all accounts, has worked his tail off, has gone from a guy that redshirted to, potentially #1 overall draft.
Unrecruited out of high school. It's amazing to think that he could do that. And a couple of years later, he is setting what we sort of think of as the modern record for home runs in a single season in the NCAA. Won the Golden Spikes Award. Really great, broad mix of skills, along with a great body and athleticism, kind of everything you're typically looking for when you're drafting at the top. If you pick first, you want upside. The history of the baseball draft, and particularly the first overall pick, is you got the best chance to get a superstar there. That's your Alex Rodriguez's and your Ken Griffey Jr.'s and Adley Rutschman, who I think has kind of turned into a superstar. Maybe he's not a household name, but he's turned into a really great player. Condon, he's 6'6". He's very athletic. He's played up the middle. I don't think he's going to end up there, but he played center field a lot this year for Georgia, and I thought he looked okay. Not maybe major league center field, but the fact that he looked good enough there says to me, well, he can go to a corner, and he's going to be pretty good there. Runs well for a guy his size. The power's real. It's really good contact quality. Not the most orthodox swing, but I don't have major concerns about the hit tool. I do think he's going to hit more than enough to get to power, and has shown a pretty good approach at the plate also. He made a small mechanical change this year just to the starting position of his hands, just kind of freed everything up. He was a much different hitter this year than he was in 2023, and I think that's a big explanation for why he suddenly got so much better.
Guy that doesn't strike out a lot, is that, that's got to, as I'm looking at it, a power hitter that doesn't strike out, I like those two things.
Yes. Doesn't strike out, doesn't swing and miss too, because we do see him. We're probably going to talk about another power hitter at some point who doesn't strike out a lot, but does have more swing and miss in the profile. You look at professional baseball now. I was going to say the majors, but even I spent a lot of time looking at the minors too. Everybody throws hard. Everybody's got pitch design, and people have got these high spin breaking balls and sweepers. And look, people strike out a lot in the minors. And so the easiest way to separate yourself as a hitting prospect is to show you can make a lot of contact. And once you can do that, then a lot of teams say, well, we can unlock more power. We can make little swing changes. We can get you stronger. We can get you just to loft the ball a little bit more. But the hardest thing to do is just to make contact with pitchers throwing as hard as they are, with these designed pitches that are designed in fact to miss bats. So when you've got guys at the top of the draft, we've got several at the top of the draft this year who show good contact quality with a lot of contact. To me, that is, if I'm picking first, I'm avoiding the high strikeout hitters. Even if I think they have more upside, those guys would scare me because there's too much of a chance they'll get right out in a pro ball and strike out so much in the low minors that suddenly you're just looking at a lower ceiling. We can talk all day long about, well, this guy's got 40 homer upside, he's got 45 homer upside. You got to hit for power. If you can't hit all that power stuff, that's great at 5 o'clock, but at 7 o'clock, that's when the real pitchers come out and they're trying to miss your bat. And if you've got a history of doing that in college, it doesn't get easier once you get into professional baseball.
Well, the second guy that we'll talk about, Travis Bazzana, top comp here is Chase Utley. You got Jake Cronenworth currently doing pretty well for the Padres. Joe Panik also mentioned. This is a guy that was the MVP of the Cape Cod League last year. The thing that kind of jumps out, second baseman. Never before has a second baseman gone #1 overall in the Major League Baseball draft. Is that just a coincidence kind of thing, or is it typically, if you're a second baseman in college, you can't play in the middle of the field in professional baseball?
Certainly can't play shortstop, right? Because if you could, you would. Right? Nobody takes a great shortstop at the college or high school level and says, we're going to put you at second base instead. That's just not how that works. I am of two minds on this. Look, historically, we've never seen a second baseman, go first overall. And that's because what we were just saying, right? If you could play shortstop, we take the shortstops. The shortstops can move to other positions more easily. The second baseman can't. If you're at second base, something's limiting you. It's your arm, it's your range, whatever it is. It's a pretty big knock. that player, that college shortstop just doesn't exist in this draft. And so I think that's part of why Bazana is so much higher than you might otherwise expect to see a college second baseman. I will also say it's pretty exceptional bat and exceptional story. He's Australian, and Australian all the way up through high school. He was playing in the Australian Professional League at 15, 16, 17. He was one of the best players down there. And then rather than signing as an international free agent, which is what would typically happen for an Australian player, he wanted to come play college baseball in the United States. Ended up at one of the best programs in Oregon State. And all he did was hit for 3 years and hit on the Cape and hit the best competition that was available to him. Everyone I talk to says, this guy's going to hit. We believe he's going to hit. His is a question of upside. The floor looks really good. You got a big leaguer and probably an everyday second baseman. How high does it get, right? This is a guy who's got to hit probably for a 300-plus average, which is hard to do at this point, to become some kind of star. Because although he did hit 20-plus homers this year, that's not his profile. He's not going to be a big power bat. It's going to be, this is a guy who hits for a high average, gets on base at a high clip, plays good defense at second base, and another one who just works his tail off. I mean, you look at, he and Condon both have really interesting backstories for guys who might go at the top of the draft, and the kind of things that make you say, I will bet on this person. I will bet on the human being, not just about the track record or the tools, but I will bet on this person to continue working as hard as he needs to work to get the most out of his abilities.
All right, the next guy we're going to look at also from your top 100, J.J. Weatherholt. That's a shortstop. And the thing you pointed out pretty quickly, he has been injured twice in the last 12 months, and that's got to be a red flag. A guy that is a shortstop from West Virginia. What do you see with his scouting profile?
I will say that's the best swing I saw all year. I mean, it is a beautiful swing. It is really, I saw him take one swing in a game at PNC Park. I saw the whole game. I didn't leave after one swing, but I saw one swing. I was like, oh, that's it. That's what we like, right? And he just keeps doing it. And it's, look, I mean, he was playing on one leg at that point because he was just barely back from the hamstring injury. He was standing at shortstop, but not actually playing shortstop. If the ball was hit anywhere more than about 2 feet from him, someone else went for it. But it's a great swing. It's really good contact quality. He's another guy who's hit pretty much everywhere he's ever played. The consensus, even before the hamstring stuff, was he'd probably end up at second base. You send him out as a shortstop and you see what happens. But he's probably going to end up in another position. It's just that it's 2 hamstring injuries and not exactly the same one inside of 12 months. He's had some other minor injury stuff that just starts to add up. And availability is a skill. You got to stay healthy. And if I'm picking 4th, which is Oakland this year, I might say I'll take that risk, right? This guy could have been the first overall pick if he'd been healthy. I will roll the dice and say I might get that huge upside, even understanding there's some risk that this guy is just going to be injured kind of forever. If I'm Cleveland, I don't know if I want to do that. I really don't. And I'm not punting on the question, but to some extent, to a large extent, right? I'm on the outside. I don't see the medicals. I don't have a doctor sitting with me going through the medicals to say I'm worried about this and I'm not worried about that. It's what you do in the draft room. So Cleveland, that's probably going to be one of the hardest, maybe the hardest overall conversation they're going to have in Cleveland's draft room is where do you rate J.J. Weatherholt? And what's the price, right? If you could sign J.J. Weatherholt and you think that taking him gets you more of a discount so that you can go hog wild with several picks afterwards, maybe you decide that that's worth it. I don't know. I'm usually not that risk averse when it comes to the draft. I mean, it's easy for me to take on a lot of risk. Right? I don't have a bonus pool and I don't get any players. But I try to pretend I do, and I think that might be more risk than I would be willing to stomach with the first pick. I might be more willing to consider him with the second pick. But at 1-1, man, you got to get that superstar if you can, and try to minimize the risk when you have better options. And I love J.J. Weatherholt as a hitter. I just think there are better options.
All right, before we go to break, and we'll get who you think the Guardians should take and who you have them taken in the mock draft on the other side of the break. Jack Caglione, that's a guy that, I mean, he's as interesting as anybody. He wants to be a two-way player. First baseman, power hitter from Florida, 90-something mile-an-hour fastball, mid-90s. Top comp they have is Bryce Harper. I think I'd have to squint really hard to see that. Matt Olson, yeah. Joey Gallo, and Carlos Gonzalez mentioned. And again, I've seen him play. I think he's a good player. I'm not seeing the Bryce Harper in that. People
tend to underrate Bryce Harper, the athlete. I mean, I'm might be a little biased because the first time I ever saw Harper, he was 15 and he was leaner and faster too. And then saw him at 16, 17, all the way on up. And so, I mean, he was a plus runner, super athletic. Bryce Harper's a unicorn. The Gallo comp makes a good bit more sense to me, and that Caglianone's that's the best raw power in the draft. If you want 40 homer upside, that's your guy. And he's done it. He's done it for 2 straight years at Florida. He is up to 99. I've personally seen him hit 97 off the mound with a decent breaking ball. I think it's straight up reliever as a delivery. It's violent. He cuts himself off. He can't really get to his glove side effectively. He's already had Tommy John once, which to me is the number one reason. If you're taking Caglianone at the top of the draft, 1, 2, 3, wherever it is, he's a hitter only. You do not risk him blowing out again and then losing the bat for some extended period of time. Also, he has stuff to work on as a hitter. I don't think he's first base only. I think you can try him in right field. I think the number one thing you have to do with him, though, this guy chases a ton out of the zone. And it's the thing I hear the most from teams in the top 10. A couple of teams have said, we're just out. We are out because of the plate discipline, because his ball strike recognition is not where it needs to be. And he didn't strike out a lot this year because he can make a ton of contact on stuff in the zone. And that's a great skill to have. But the fact that he has continued to chase, to continue to be so aggressive on pitches outside the zone has scared some teams, even below Cleveland, in the top 10, which says to me, I wouldn't do it. Even recognizing at the end of the day, he could be the best player because he's got that crazy power upside. I would be really reluctant to do that with the first overall pick, with that risk factor staring you in the face.
Keith Law from The Athletic and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll tell you who Keith mocked number 1 to the Guardians, as well as who he would take number 1 if he had to pick. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Guardians with Keith Law, one of the best baseball writers in America. He writes for The Athletic. Keith, I know you've done a mock draft. Who did you mock number 1 overall to the Guardians? And if you had the number 1 overall pick, who would you take?
So I've done 3 mocks so far, and I bring that up because I had the same guy in mocks 1 and 3. I guess I won't hold up finger number 2 to show you that one. So, and the third mock went up on Thursday, the 11th. I may update one on draft day as well, do an updated one as I'm continuing to hear stuff, and I'm making notes here, even during the break. It's Travis Bazzana. That's who I have them taking. It's who I had them taking the first mock. It's who I had them taking in the third mock for 2 reasons. One is just that's the name I've heard the most with them for much of the spring. Coming into the year, people were talking about Weatherholt. I think the injury issue has pushed him down the board. It's not impossible. I know that Weatherholt is still on their short list. Bazzana seems to be one, I think, the most Cleveland type of player. Like, we know what they tend to like in the draft, and he does offer a lot of that. And I think probably more likely to take the kind of deal that they'd be looking for, which is not to say I think they're making a bad pick. I hear that a lot from people. Oh, I don't want Cleveland to screw this up. I don't want them to go cheap. That's not what this is. This is how you play the draft board. That said, I would take Condon. My top 100 is the best I can offer you, as this is my prep list. If I were team 31 and I had draft picks, this is the order I would have on the board with the information that's available to me. I saw Condon kind of out of his mind this year, too. I mean, he played out of his mind most of the year, but I saw him on the road. He was way better at home. I happened to see him at Knoxville against the eventual College World Series champions, Tennessee. I think he was 6 for 10, 2 homers, both absolutely smoked, great plate discipline, played really well for me in center. I just sort of walked out of there saying, I don't think I'm going to see a better player all spring. And I didn't. I recognize that it's not clear cut. This isn't the Bryce Harper or Steven Strasburg draft where it's clear who's won, but I do favor him a little bit over Bazzana because of the potential upside.
Is that fair? Just in your mind, Condon has a higher upside than Bazzana. Is that kind of what?
I think Yeah, I think so. Because of the bat, more than anything else because of the bat. Because I do think if you're betting, Condon ends up either in right field or he's played some third base. Now, I didn't get to see that. It was all center when I saw him at Rocky Top. But you might send him out as a third baseman and see what it looks like. Obviously, there's more potential value if he can play a skilled position like third versus another, like an outfield corner. I think he'd be fine in right field. He might actually be a plus defender out there. But it is the upside with the bat. And Bazana's really good. Weatherholt's really good. Those guys can really, really hit. I feel more confident in their hit tools than I do in Condon's, but Condon has way more power upside. And frankly, I look at the bodies too and the athleticism, and I think he offers more of that. You can do more with guys who are lean, wiry, twitchy, athletic like Condon is, whereas Bazana and Weatherholt are kind of what you see is what you get. And that's not a criticism. It's just, look, we're at the top of the draft. We're trying to find fine distinctions between players because you can't have a tie. You only get to pick one guy. You can't say, well, we like both these guys. We'll take half Condon and half Bazana. That's not possible, at least not yet.
All right. Guardians also have picks 36 and 48. So they have 3 of the top 50. So we've heard, you try to save some of the money so you can go over slot. Who are some guys that might slide down because they're looking for more money than what a slot would be?
And those are typically high school players. So going back to sort of the first question you asked, just to make sure folks know what we're talking about here, high school players have the leverage to say, I've got this great offer to go to LSU or Tennessee or where, to elite schools, elite baseball schools. Often it's an elite academic school, right? Vanderbilt and UVA, Stanford. Often it's been harder to buy guys out of that, or they can ask for more money because they've got such great college offers. And now with NIL money, they can even say, I have this much money on the table from the school that I'm going to. So you've got to make me an even better offer. Good for them. I want to see all these kids get paid. It has changed the calculus a lot. And players we think are first round on talent can slip to 36, 48, particularly if Cleveland makes it known. We have $3 million available for this player if he gets to 36 or for any of these players. So I can throw a few names out there. I can't promise you any of these guys will specifically be available, but there's a lot of high school pitching that's going to get out of the first round and go, I think, between picks 30 and 50, where Cleveland picks twice. Brian Sloan is a very tall, strong right-hander from just outside of Chicago who's been up to 100 with one of the best changeups in the draft. William Schmidt is committed to LSU. He's from just outside of Baton Rouge. He has one of the best curveballs in the draft. He's also throws pretty hard, good body. People like the delivery. He did taper off a little over the spring. That may be an opportunity, though. That may make him more available for Cleveland. There is an infielder in Omaha, or just outside of Omaha, Tyson Lewis. He could go in the first round, but I've heard that there's at least the possibility that he's going to ask for enough money that he could slip a little bit to maybe to pick 36, where it's athletic, shortstop, good swing, power. People haven't seen him hit against good competition, like really good competition. And that's a problem we run into with a lot of high school kids from cold weather areas where they just haven't seen a lot of good pitching. And so we don't have as much confidence in the hit tool. That's another reason a guy can slide a little bit. Last name I'll throw at you, Dasan Hill, D-A-S-A-N, from Texas, lefty. I've only seen him on video, but I have to say I saw the video and I thought, ooh, this is really interesting. Projectable, lean, liked the way the arm worked. Body was good, saw the makings of 3 pitches, and just asked around a little bit. Is this guy not first round possibility? And people said more it's somebody's second pick overpay. He's that kind of guy. That is now a category of player we have where it's like no one's taking this guy with the first pick. But once you get to those second picks in the comp round, teams with money might target guys like him. Hill might be somebody who's available at 48, not at 36. I just found him really interesting. As somebody, I tend to be very hard on high school pitchers because their failure rate is so high in pro ball. Hill has a lot of the things I like with that projection and the athleticism where it's not just now velocity, but it's the kind of guy where I could see gradual growth once he gets into a system that's really good with pitching, like Cleveland is. And if I were them, I'd say, we know what we do really well. We develop pitching as well as anybody. Let's make sure we find guys who fit our mold.
So before I let you go, a couple of things. When you look at this draft class, who are some guys that you really like that you think might be not valued as high as you would value them?
I'm so glad you asked. I've had a guy this week. So there's a pitcher at Alabama named Ben Hess, H-E-S-S, where I've been asking around, saying, why isn't this guy getting first round consideration? It's easily first round stuff. The delivery is pretty good. He gets huge extension out front too, so the stuff plays up really well. He had great results pitching in the SEC. The biggest knock I'd heard on him during the season was he really didn't pitch that deep into games. He was kind of a 5-and-dive starter. But his last 3 or 4 times out, he pitched into the 6th and 7th inning and held 95, 96. That's a mid-rotation starter for me. And I just don't understand why he's not getting considered higher. I haven't heard his name at all in the first round. As I've asked around, I've run into people who say, we really like him, but for some reason, he's just maybe not going to go in the top 30 picks. Peyton Stovall is another one where I have him ranked as a first rounder. I have absolutely, my belief is there's 0% chance he goes up there. It's all bad. He's a college second baseman at Arkansas. He can really hit, though. Slow start this year. He's coming back from an injury, but it's a really good swing. It's good contact quality. It's the bet on the hit tool, right? If he doesn't hit, you kind of don't have anything. And I understand that risk makes teams uncomfortable. So maybe he's more of a second pick type of guy. But we've known about him since high school. People always like the swing, always like the ability to hit. He's not a great defender. I understand there's not a lot of other tools, but he was one guy where I saw in a couple games at Kentucky and walked out thinking, man, if that guy doesn't hit, I don't know what we're doing here. So that's another one. I think he just might be undervalued. Maybe I'm just falling in love with a beautiful swing, but I'll bet on those guys.
All right. Now, before I let you go, I know you had a chance to see one of the Guardians down on the farm, Parker Messick, currently AA Akron. It was recently promoted, 18 1/3 innings, 3.44 ERA, 2-1 record, 27 strikeouts, just 8 walks. What have you seen, and what did you like about Messick?
He's really deceptive. So he's a lefty. He's a full-figured guy. But he repeats the delivery pretty well. It's not even the prettiest arm action, but he makes it work. And hitters do not seem to pick up the ball at all. Now, it's a fringy fastball. He topped out at 93. By his last couple innings, he was like 89, 91. I saw him last night at Reading, which is a very good place to hit also. He gave up 2 solo home runs. I think that was all he allowed in terms of runs. It's a really good place for homers, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But he mixed his pitches well. He was spotting. He was hitting his locations. It was really interesting to see a guy with stuff that was just kind of okay. I don't think there's a plus pitch in there, but he gets outs, and hitters really do not like facing him because you could see a lot of the swings were very awkward. Hitters were just not seeing the ball out of his hand. And look, that formula can work all the way up to the big leagues. I don't think it's huge upside. I think you got to keep this guy as a starter as long as you can.
Keith Law from The Athletic, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Keith.
My pleasure.
Keith Law, make sure you check him out, The Athletic. He will have coverage of the Major League Baseball draft. I might have another mock draft going. Guardians have the #1 overall pick. Make sure you check it out. Keith Law with The Athletic, one of the best baseball writers in the country. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night and a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.